Hello and welcome. My name is Leah Kopke. I'm a 3D motion design freelancer, and this is my 3D modeling podcast, Ambient 3D Animations. Today I wanted to begin the pinball machine project, where we 3D model a pinball machine and we make it look like it's in this pixelated style using the voxel mesher from Rocket Lasso. And as I had started recording this and started editing the videos, I've actually started editing about 5 videos already for this series focusing on the pinball machine. And during that time, I started really reflecting. I feel like I often start reflecting when I edit. I don't know if that happens for anyone else, because you're looking back at your process and really starting to think about it when you see yourself work. So if anyone else has that experience, let me know about it in the comments. I'm curious. I realized that in the first episode, I had just shown my mood boards and started 3D modeling from there, but I realized in reflection that there was actually a whole process before that. When I went to school for industrial design, we often presented our projects first starting with the mood board and maybe a problem statement. But I feel like there's so much that happened for me doing this project even before that point, and I was leaving it out just out of habit of how I explain my process. When I initially started this project, it initially started with me going to NAB in Las Vegas, the convention there, and I saw Rocket Lasso present there. And they were showing the new voxel mesher tool, and it looked like a lot of fun. I was very excited about it, and I thought, I want to try using this someday. And more recently, I wanted to actually make a YouTube video about it, and that meant learning the tool. So I got the plugin. I went through all of Chris Schmidt's videos on how to use the voxel mesher, and I learned a ton from that. I even took some notes on that, and I actually went ahead and practiced using the tool itself inside of Cinema 4D to see what it did and what it could do. And I realized that even at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to 3D model. I didn't know that I wanted to 3D model a pinball machine. And when I reflect on where the pinball machine idea came from, I realized that I can't even tell you a specific place where it came from. Why did I think I want to make a pinball machine? Where do our ideas come from? I've heard some people say that it comes from your subconscious mind. It could come from how you're feeling. I've heard people even say that there are spiritual reasons why you come up with ideas. I've heard ideas can come from solving a problem. And I don't really know if anyone knows for sure where ideas come from. If you have an idea of where you think ideas come from, you can leave them in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your perspective, and I'm sure a ton of other people would learn from it as well as me. So I was thinking, where did this idea of a pinball machine come from? And I thought back to that moment when I came up with this idea of, I'm going to make this pixelated, voxelized pinball machine with the pixels coming together and this thing forming. And when I look back to that, I remember in that moment, I wasn't really thinking about this project. I wasn't thinking about anything too hard at all. I was making a cup of tea and it was pretty quiet. And upon reflecting on that, I realized that I come up with my best ideas when it is quiet and I'm relaxed and not worried about doing something, not speeding towards something, not actively trying to solve a problem. That's when I come up with my most creative ideas. And I was wondering if that's also your experience. I've never come up with an idea in a loud environment with a ton of people and a lot of noise that was distracting. It's always those quiet moments where I'm relaxing. And it seems like that's where creativity comes from. So remember to take care of yourself and give yourself those calming moments to design. But after doing that research and watching those videos and coming up with this idea while having a cup of tea, which was really the first part of the process, I wanted to continue practice and testing things out inside of Cinema 4D, kind of like a proof of concept, before I even go and make a mood board. So what I had done is actually made something very similar to this cube here. I recreated it since I don't think I kept the original file. And here I was just testing out using the voxel mesher and painting the voxels to see what that would be like and what that process would be like, and adding in some effectors to it and a field, and animating the field so that we can see the voxel coming together and what that would look like. And I don't know if this is going to be exactly what the final version does in terms of animation, but it gave me an idea. It gave me a sense of direction. It made me feel more solid in my idea that this was something that could be done, that I could 3D model a pinball machine and have this animate. And this just gives you more confidence. Just testing this out on something small, a cube or a sphere, you can try something out in a smaller, easier scale inside of Cinema 4D before taking on a huge project that will take possibly more than a day. Investing all those hours into it, you can take 5-10 minutes to test out an idea and see if it actually works in reality here on your computer, on a simple sphere or cube. And that's what I did. But I think it's really great practice, and I think it's good if we go through this process together, actually, before even talking about my mood boards and the ideas and the concept behind this pinball machine in greater depth. Let's practice using the tool together and get familiar with it, so that as you follow along with me, you have an idea of the direction we're actually going in for this project. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to open up a new file and pause this one, and we're going to go through this together. So here I have a new fresh scene opened, and I'm going to drop a cube into my scene. That's the very first step. We're going to be practicing with this cube. If I'd like to see my edges, I can go ahead and turn on garage shading lines. Now we need to turn this cube into a lot of voxels, and in the last episode we talked about the volume builder and how it does that. So I'm going to hold Alt and click on the volume builder right here, and that will drop our cube within the hierarchy of the volume builder, and you can see this is voxelized. We have some voxels here. Now I'm going to need Rocket Lasso's plugin, which I can find under my extensions. If you have this plugin as well, you can go ahead and follow along with me and use it. I'm going to hold the Alt button again and click on the RKT Voxel mesher. You can purchase this from Rocket Lasso store if you'd like to do this project along with me. I'll share it in the description below. So now we have the RKT Voxel mesher, we have the volume builder, we have our cube. That's a pretty good start, right? Now I want to paint the individual voxels on this, the individual cubes. So we have two geometry modes. We have shell and we have cube. We're going to have one form have data, color data, linked to its points. And that mesh with the color data linked to its points, that's going to drive the data for another mesh that's made up of cubes using a cloner, and we'll go into greater depth in these in the future. I know this is a ton of information, and I'll show you this in a moment. In this example scene, you can see all of these are different colors. So we need something to drive this effect here. So we actually need two of these. We have this first one set to shell. and we need a second one. So I'm going to copy this and paste it. Now we have 2. And actually the second one I want to be set to cube. So that's made up of a bunch of little cubes. And you could see that in my volume builder. Right now I'm using the sign distance field, which is fine for right now. That'll lower our calculations actually a little bit in comparison to using fog, because it'll be hollow. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the last episode. So this one is set to cube, and we're going to need this to be converted to a cloner. So you can just click this button here, and it'll basically create a cloner, and the location of each one of those voxels will be used to determine where these cubes go. And now we're just saying show that information as a cloner, basically, so that we can get the other MoGraph tools that we can use, like effectors, and we can use fields and such like that with this. So we have this one here that's shell, and this one is actually going to drive our paint. And something really interesting that I found with this is that it actually helps to put this within a connect object, the shell version of it, before making it editable. So what I can do is I can go into my generators here, and you'll see we have this connect object, and we've covered this tool in the past. It basically welds the points together, and that makes it easier to paint the individual points when they're welded together on your form. And the shell option, instead of turning this into individual cubes, it's actually a surface for us to work with, and that's rather helpful. So imagine that surface being welded together, and we can even solo this so that we're just looking at this now. This is the solo button, and now we're only seeing this and not our other cloner. So with that selected, I'm going to add in a connect object. And you can see that now this is all being welded together, and that is a pretty good start. And now we want to be able to edit the individual vertex. So what we need to do is hit the C button or the Make Editable button here in order to do that. And I'm going to rename this Paint Data. So what we need in order to create some data for this is we need to right-click on this, and we need to go under Other Tags and add in a Vertex Color tag. And you'll see it all kind of turns black like that. We need our paint mode to be set to Vertex Color RGB, and with that we can actually paint on the individual points. What I found helpful is to add the paint tool to my UI, so you can do that using Shift-C and just search for your paint tool here. And once you find it, you can drag and drop it and just set it somewhere off to the side like I did. So if I let go of my mouse, you see that I added it into the side there, so I can easily access it more quickly. So with our color tag selected and this tool selected, we can choose a color in here, and we can adjust it in here, and I can begin to paint on this. You can adjust the opacity of the paint as well. You can make all different colors, you can make this bigger, you can make this smaller, you can add in all different kinds of fun things. I'm basically scribbling on this cube. This is not meant to be any fine art. We're just experimenting and trying things out and getting messy. If you look back to your childhood, I'm sure you did some crafts that were more experimental than you were really thinking about the final product being a beautiful piece of art. And that's really the mindset I find helpful to be in this phase of creating something. So now we have this really cool color data on this cube. I only colored half of it. I guess we could color in this other half here if I wanted to. But now we have this very nice colored cube that we've made. Now somehow we need to get this color data onto our clones, right? And this is soloed right now, this mesh, so this is all we're looking at. If I unsolo this, you can see that we have some intersections happening here. And that's kind of annoying to see that. So I'm actually going to do a few things. I'm going to right click on this, go under the render tag, select display, and with that we're going to choose to use our visibility and reduce it to 0%. So now our mesh that we painted is invisible. And if we click on this lower dot here twice, it'll turn red, and that'll mean we aren't rendering this because we're just using the color data from this to drive the cloner. So the way we tell the cloner use this color data is we need to start off with using a plane effector. So we talked about how cloners allow us to use effectors. So under our effectors, we can find something called our plane effector. And this is super versatile. I use the plane effector all the time. And that's probably why Cinema 4D and Maxon has it at the top of the list. So with my cloner selected, when I click on the plane effector automatically is being applied to our cloner because that's what we had selected before we added in the plane effector here. And you'll see the entire cube raised up. Well, why is that? If we go into the parameters, by default, it says move this up 100 centimeters. I'm going to have this go down to 0 and just turn off the position. You'll see that you can affect position, rotation, scale here, but we're really only interested in color in this case, and we're using fields color. So we'll need to go over to our fields tab and drag and drop our color tag into here. And now you can see our cubes are colored. Our cloner is now colored. These individual cubes have color now. And that's really powerful. And you can see how we can get this really cool pixelated style with this. This isn't even a pinball machine yet. And we just scribbled on it and it's already looking pretty cool. It kind of has that retro vibe to it. And that's what we're going for. So we're testing things out. We're getting familiar with the tools and we're trying them out on this cube. And you can imagine how cool this would look on something you 3D modeled. So now that we have this in place, there's more that we can do with this. We can also animate cloners, like what we were showing in the first example here. This other guy that I had scribbled on. And you can see that I have a field flowing through this and pulling it together. And you can really layer effectors and use different types of fields. You can go really complex with this workflow and do something really intricate if you'd like to. So with our cloner selected, let's go ahead and go into our MoGraph and look at our effectors and our options here. Another really fun effector that I like is the random, because it randomizes everything, and that look of chaos is really interesting. It's just visually interesting to see things be kind of chaotic and then come together and into a refined form, or at least I find that visually interesting. So within the effector of our random effector, our parameter tab, we can affect things like the position. You can see it affects the position by default, but we can also affect the rotation if we wanted to in here. We can affect the scale if we wanted to in here. We can choose uniform scale or adjust the scale in different directions here. I'm going to choose uniform scale because I like everything as cubes. Now we have this going on here. Very, very fun, very, very exciting. They're kind of intersecting and I don't like that. So another fun effector we can use if we have our cloner selected is we can go ahead and add a very fun push apart effector, and it does exactly like what it sounds like it does. It pushes things apart, and you can select the radius for that distance they're being pushed apart. And if I reduce this, you can see them begin to come together a little bit. So let's have them like further out, kind of like this. It's kind of an unexpected thing. We're doing something a little bit different than the last one. If we're doing an experiment, we might as well be experimental and try a different radius here. So now how do we animate this? Well, you'll see that these effectors have this tab in here called the Fields tab, and we can add something into that. We can add in a field. So let's just click on a field for right now, and now we have a field in our scene. I added in a linear field. You'll see that there's all different kinds of fields. So if you want to get really experimental with this and the shape of your field, go for it. Try things out. Press buttons, see what they do. It's a great way to learn. So I have my field in here, and I want my field to drive my push apart effector. So with my push apart selected in my attributes manager under fields, I'm going to go ahead and drop the linear field in here. Now you can see things shifted a little bit. Now I also want to do this for the random effector, so I'll click on that. And I'll take a look at my fields. I'll put the linear field in here. Now you can see something interesting is starting to happen. I have my linear field selected. I'm going to go ahead and hit save really quick, just in case. Now that I have this saved, I'm going to click on my linear field. I'm going to go into object mode and click E, and I can just move this back and forth. And you can begin to see the cool effect that we're getting here. It's really, really fun. Really, really cool. Okay, so I'm going to move this here, and we can keyframe it by hitting this button here, and then go to the end, move this all the way through, keyframe it again, and I know I'm not adjusting the curves or doing anything too fancy here, but now if we press play, this is happening, and this is actually cooler than the last example, I feel. We're kind of watching this all assemble. And I think this is really fun and cool. So this is basically our proof of concept for what we're going to do later with this pinball machine we 3D model. Because this is a new tool, so it's good to try it out and learn about it first before we jump into it. And you get the idea of the process before we even do it on a larger, more complicated scale. So that's what I want to show you here today. And I hope you found this helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you think ideas come from or what helps you come up with cool ideas for your projects. And I'd love to also hear just your thoughts on designing processes and what helps you while you're working on a project, come up with ideas, that kind of thing. And I hope to see you here next time on Ambient 3D Animations, because we'll get more into the mood board and actually start 3D modeling this. So I'm really excited for that, and I hope to see you here soon. If you like this, please hit like, please hit subscribe. I hope to see you here next time on Ambient 3D Animations.